Right. Hello, hello. Check, check. Check, check. Hello, hello, everyone who was joining in. Welcome to the stream. Uh, First ever live stream on YouTube. And as you guys know, we're going to be doing a Mixdown session today. So, yeah, waiting for more people to join in. In the meantime, I'll just play the track that we'll be working on today. It's a track I finished recently. Let's give it a listen and then we can get down to business. Right. So, hi guys. For those of you joining us in the chat, welcome to the stream. Welcome to our first ever Mixdown stream on Spawn Commune channel. And just say hi in the chat if you can hear me, and if you can hear the audio properly, just give me a sign so I know you guys can hear me and the track as well. And then we can get down to mixing this shit down. Right. So yeah, guys, let's begin. Welcome once again, whoever's watching and whoever's checking out the stream. We are doing, of course, as I said, we are doing a mixdown session today. And I'll be basically going through this track, mixing it down, and you get to see my process. I'll obviously be talking through it and giving the essential commentary that's required. And also, we'll try to keep this simple in terms of the tools that we use. I wouldn't want to try and overload you with a whole bunch of plugins and a whole bunch of technical knowledge as well. We'll try to keep it brief and simple. Of course, over the coming few weeks, I will be mixing down more tracks of mine and hopefully some of my friends' tracks, and we'll dive more deep into the process of mixing down music. And of course, that'll give me a chance to dive more deep into the immense rabbit hole that Mixdown is, because it's so vast. It's such a vast subject in itself, even though it's part of music production. So yeah, anyway, let's get down to it. So yeah, this is a track I wrote recently. It was just kind of one of those impulsive kind of tracks. I was feeling maybe a little bubbly, and this track sort of just came out of nowhere, and now it's, you know, it's out here in reality, and it just like a lot of tracks that just, you know, get made in a matter of an hour or two while you're in the zone, and when you're in that flow state, they just sort of spew out of you. So this is one of those tracks, and it might even give you the kind of idea of the kind of music that I've been making of late. So yeah, that was the idea. And yeah, as you guys can see, I have not more about 18 channels. That includes the SFX and the lead, and well, there's a lot of drums. It's a very loopy track. It's kind of old school. it's kind of, I guess, on the border of house and techno in that sense. But yeah, it's a fun track, I would say. So yeah, that's basically like in terms of the mood of the track, that's what it is. And in terms of the process, I usually start off generally with the low end first. I process the kick and bass, obviously, first, starting off with that. And then I go down the list and I check all the channels. If I need to tune something, I tune it, fix the frequency ranges of all the elements, fix, whatever needs to be fixed. And of course, whatever is not in place, out of place in terms of volume or in any other way, we fix it. And of course, getting the track ready to be sent out either to a record label or to a mastering engineer, or both, is the end goal of you doing a mixdown session like this. Now, obviously, when I also do mixdown sessions, I do it in parts generally because I like to do it in parts. Okay, you guys can hear everything properly. Great. So yeah, as I was saying, I like to do things in parts, and a very important thing in Mixdown for me is to take regular breaks. Now, if let's say I do a session today of about an hour or 90 minutes or something like that, I would prefer to take a break of at least a couple of hours to refresh my ears, because ear fatigue is a very real thing. And it can start to affect your judgment and start to make you make some very weird decisions, because after, and your ears get fatigued after a point, things start sounding either very good or very bad, and you can't base your decisions on emotions when it comes to Mixdown. At least not entirely. You can a little bit, of course, because it is your track and it's your baby, and you wanted to sound it a certain way, and that's actually what a Mixdown is for, to make your track sound good, right? So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get down to the session today. We'll try to wrap it up within the next hour or so, and as I said, we'll keep it brief, simple. I won't dive too much into plugins and this and that. We'll focus on the basics. Yeah, that being, we will focus on doing a very simple way of mixing down called beta mixing. That's BEDA. Again, it's a terminology I picked up from another great mixing mastering engineer and producer called Dan Warhol. You can check out his videos on YouTube as well. So yeah, that's basically according to him, and what I would agree are the four sort of pillars of a mixdown is balance, equalization, dynamics, and ambience. If you are able to target these four sort of categories of your mix and do justice to each one of them, the end result will be a fantastic sounding track. So that's what we'll try to do today. So yeah, let's get down to it. Now, what I usually do, first things first, actually, I go over to my master channel, and as you can see, I have some filter automation on my master channel, which is basically this filter, like it's a high pass filter, which is giving some breaks here in the middle. Now, yeah, it's not the best looking automation, but yeah, these automations here, they're basically just giving small breaks. Now, you can do this directly on your low end group, like this group, first group I have here. I'll just rename this actually. This is my kick and bass. So on this kick and bass group, you can generally just do these automation and basically giving those breaks that you need in the track. But I've done it on the master channel because I also wanted to filter some other elements out while the break occurs, right? So aside from that, I don't like to have anything else on my master. This also is a very occasional thing. I don't do this all the time. I have done it in this case, but as you can see, there's absolutely nothing else. There's no resonance. The roll off is very smooth. I have not done any soft clipping or drive at all because I don't want any processing on the master channel. Aside from that, I also have a spectrum. Now, the spectrum obviously tells me what frequencies are being occupied by the whole track and everything. This is, of course, important because it's just indicating to me what's going on in my track. And finally, aside from this, what I do usually at the beginning of the mixdown is I put a utility on my master channel and I turn on mono. Now, this is something I want to address right off the bat is it's a very good habit to develop to mix your tracks in mono. Now, the reason why I say this, of course, is one of them. The most important, the main reason is mono compatibility. That means that most speakers and listening devices that people use are for in a large part mono systems, especially a lot of club systems to car systems to portable speakers. They are all based in mono systems that are split into stereo. Very rare to find real stereo systems around the world. So it is very essential that you make sure that your music sounds good in mono. For that reason, and also secondly to avoid stereo phasing, because sometimes when there's a lot of information, low end information in your stereo, that can cause issues and make your mix sound muddy, uncluttered, and not transparent at all. So yeah, again, that's something I'll address a little down the line when we start to EQ things and we go deeper with our tools. So yeah, let's jump into this. And obviously this is again very temporary. I will remove this maybe halfway through my mix down process when I'm confident that okay, my mix sounds even halfway decent and there's no stereo issues. I will remove the utility then, because I would prefer to do the rest of my mix down in by hearing my panning and hearing all the delays that I've done, which also are very important to deal with. So for now, we'll start with putting mono on the master, and I'm pretty sure it should sound fine. Let's just do a quick check generally. Now I think it sounds fine, but obviously there are issues I can hear very obviously. Like there's some issues in the tops and the hats, for example. There's some issues, and obviously in the mids, and we have a lot of cleaning up to do, which I haven't done, like EQ wise and tonally and even balance wise. So it's gonna sound better as we progress through the project and we do what we need to do. So aside from doing this, another thing, prep thing that I do for mixdowns, and I would suggest you guys do, is freeze and flatten everything, bounce all the tracks, make everything into audio. And also another thing I like to do, which I think is very useful, is consolidate all the clips. Don't have individual clips, because when you consolidate all the clips, it adjusts the volumes of the clips to a certain degree, and you can adjust the volume of the clips in a uniform way. And it just makes your clips much cleaner and easier to deal with a more organized project also. So what we'll do, we'll do that. So as you guys can see, I already have bounced my kick and bass. They're already bounced. I will probably bounce the rest of my hats and stuff, because there's some in. Are there some? Yes, there are some things which are still in MIDI and stuff like that. So what I'll do is I'll just select all my channels all the way from top to bottom here, aside from the kick and bass. Right click and bounce tracks in place. Yeah, this is going to take a second. Yeah, and chat, whoever's around, if you guys can, just drop me a message, or if you have any questions, you can drop it in the chat below, and I'll try to answer them whenever I can. I'll take breaks in the middle after maybe every few minutes, and I'll try to answer your questions. But of course, we can do this even later after the stream. So yeah, drop your questions in the chat when you feel like it, and I'll get back to you. Right. Okay. So now that we're pretty much done with bouncing, everything is now bounced, which is what we need. I will also consolidate everything. I am going to ungroup this for a second, because we will obviously use groups. Using groups is very essential. So for now, I'll just ungroup it so that it's easier for us to consolidate everything and make sure everything is like a single clip, and then we can deal with the transients and things like that. So what I'll do is I'll just select our whole arrangement, and Command J is the shortcut for consolidation. Yeah, this will take a second. Right. Uh, Now that even the consolidation is done, very important thing whenever you consolidate, bounce, and work in audio, make sure your transient mode of your sounds, especially things that have transients, is either set to complex, or even if it's on beats, make sure it's set to the playback, the correct playback mode, the transient mode, because by default it's in this loop back and forth mode. But what we needed is to play in this, because this actually, this play to its end mode, this is what actually allows your transients to play as they're supposed to and play from start to finish, and it doesn't affect your transients in a weird way. But what I do is, because these sounds are already kind of loopy and complex and bounce, I just keep it to complex just to be safe. And another advantage of putting in something like complex is that it helps me to pitch correct things if I need to, let's say, tune things, because I'm writing in a scale. Like if this track, for example, is in the scale of B minor, I would like to make sure that pretty much everything is in the scale of B minor. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And yeah, let me just fix this. Right. And as you can see, I have no need to actually go to every clip and correct them and make them into complex, because my default warp mode is complex. You can change that in the settings. Just go to your warp section in your settings. You'll be able to just change that to complex by default. So whenever you bounce things and consolidate things, it's in complex. So now if we open up our whole project, you can see it's all consolidated, all the gaps, everything, all the automations, everything, all the breaks that you've given in the track, everything is baked in. We don't have to worry. Your track is as it is. Now we can start working on things. For example, I noticed straight off the bat that the low end could use a little bit of balancing. So what I'll do is I will group this, and I'll start working on the low end. Now I'll hear the kick and bass individually, because once I get that right, all my other sort of uh, decisions that I make in terms of balance and everything surrounds the kick, because at the end we are making dance music. So the kick is our holy grail. It is the center of our universe, because that's actually is providing a certain context of loudness and making sure that everything else around that falls into place in terms of strictly balance speaking. In terms of balance, yes. So what I'll do is, so one of the things I generally like to check with the kick is something called phase. Now, if you don't know what phase is, there are many videos out there explaining phase. I might do a video also explaining what is phase cancellation, and how it affects not just your low end, but a lot of other things inside your mix. So what we can do is we can use tools that can help us identify these problems and fix them. Now, thing is, to hear phase, it can be tricky if the quality of your headphones or your speakers is not good. Then phasing can be a little tricky to identify, but it becomes very evident when your music is played in club systems or in any other proper systems, when it's mastered and summed. It starts to create problems, and your low end becomes A, inconsistent, and B, it becomes very weak. So we don't want that. So one of the ways to check is to use an oscilloscope with a sidechain function if possible. So I'll use my go-to preference, which is Shaperbox, and it has a oscilloscope function. So what I've done is I've put this Shaperbox here. I put it on my bass, and what I'll do is I'll use this oscilloscope function here. And I will do sidechain input from the kick. And what I'll also do is turn this into audio, and I'll turn on the external sidechain button. So now my kick and bass, I'll be able to see them both here visually. Yeah, there we go. So I'll just zoom into this a bit. I'll just reduce the size of the... So as you can see here, there is of course a bit of overlap happening between the tail end of the kick and the bass. Now if you guys can sort of zoom in. Yeah, so I've frozen the sine waves so you can see them, because when you zoom in you realize that it's all just sine waves. You can see that the peaks of this are, at least for the most part, in line with the bass. Even if few peaks are off here and there, it's okay. It would have been a problem if there were more peaks out of phase with the bass's peaks, because that's what phase is, right? Like these peaks over here that you can see have to match with the peaks of the bass, which is the white waveform that you see, and this yellow one is the kick, obviously. Now we shall be doing a bit of side chaining here, which I haven't done yet. I'll maybe use something simple like a kickstart. So we'll create even more separation so that the bass comes in even more late. So the chance of that phase issue happening goes down even further. Now, this is something you definitely need to pay attention to if you're not planning to do very aggressive side chaining, if you're not planning to do very aggressive separation between your kick and bass. It is important to do, a phase check, because then in those kind of situations, your kick and bass will be overlapping directly on top of each other, for the most part at least. But here, it's not that much of an issue, and I think it sounds fine also. I mean, I can't hear that inconsistency either, because at the end the best tool is your ear. So another check you can do is you can just put a utility and just switch the phase of the left or right channels. So these buttons, basically that's what they're doing. They're just turning the phase of that particular sound on both the left and right channels, and flipping it upside down. So if this sounds better, then most likely, yes, you have phase issues. If it doesn't sound better, or if there's not making much of a difference, then you can just leave it. Yes, so I do notice a slight increase in volume in the bass when the phase is shifted. So that means that, yes, actually shifting the bass, inverting the phase is making a bit of a difference. So what I'll do is I'm going to leave this here and just listen to the kick and bass again. Yes, so simply by inverting the phase, I can hear a much more separation and clarity between the kick and bass. So this is something to keep in mind. Yeah, let's move on. Now that we have checked the phase of our kick and bass, and we are okay with what it sounds like, I'm going to obviously put in a kickstart. I'll put it right before, and we don't need the shaper box anymore. So I'll use our kickstart, which I've covered in a different video before. If you want to check it out, you can. It's nothing but a simple volume shaping side shading tool, which I use quite often because it's quick and easy to use. So something like this maybe. So you guys can see this is basically where the bass starts. So until, and like, you know, we can check. So this is again mostly a precautionary sort of situation, because I have done a little bit of sidechaining already, but this I am doing as a extra step, as a precaution again, to put the kickstart. This is a bit aggressive, so I'll maybe come back to something like this. Yeah, so after I've done the sidechain, you can see that we don't need the utility anymore actually, because the phase issue is negligible or it's almost gone. So we don't really need this thing anymore, because the kick and bass are as defined as I want them to sound. So no problem at all. Now we can obviously do other things which are necessary to clean up the low end a little bit. For example, we start with the kick. We can take the Fab Filter Pro Q 4 or 3, which you use whichever EQ you want. Actually, you can use like one of those analog EQs also. But what we're going to do basically is just find the muddiness in the kick, because I feel this kick is a little bit boxy. So yeah, so whenever somebody says boxy, the boxiness usually comes from this area over here. It's generally between 2 to 600 hertz is where the boxiness comes from. So we find the spot, we move things around with like a notch EQ like this, and then we use this bell curve to narrow down on this. And thing is, we don't really have to get too specific here. We have to find like a slightly broad space where a small dip like this can work, and we're not gonna do a dip more than like 2-3 dB. Yeah, and make sure that whenever you do dips like this, it might cause a little bit of a volume dip in this area also, because it's a very gradual sort of incline going into the bell. So you can obviously change the Q to make it a bit more specific, or if you feel like it's lacking over here, just bring it back up again. Maybe over here. Yeah, so much cleaner kick. I'll make it dynamic. Maybe even a bit over here, because this is again a lot of the mid-range frequency, because our track has a lot of harmonic content. This area is where a lot of the mid-range will also sit. So we will create a small dynamic dip here also, maybe about this much, not too much. Yeah, another thing we can check is we know that since we're writing in the scale of B minor, we'll just check where the kick is peaking. Yeah, it's at an A sharp. So what we can do is A sharp to B is just one semitone. So what we can do is we can actually take the kick up one semitone, or we can take it down as well, because we don't want the kick to have too much of a top end. So we'll take it down. Let's hear it in the mix. Yeah, I think that's good. And I feel it's sounding a little better with a slightly lower sort of tone. And whoever's joining us in the chat in our stream right now, hi and welcome. If you have any questions, if you'd like to say hi, just say hi in the chat if you can. Now, also, obviously, one of the main things I notice right away we haven't done is the kick and bass is very loud also. So yeah, it's super loud, right? If I switch to, yeah, it's like -6. So I'll just turn this down. In fact, what I'll do is I'm gonna just take all the channels from here till like here, and we'll just use our volume faders to turn everything down by about 2-3 dB. 3. Yeah, for now, again, obviously we'll come back and make adjustments. And thing is, I have only after I finished composition is when I did a first round of balancing the sounds. That's why you can see that my volume faders of all the channels have been moved. But I would recommend you avoid doing this and save it for as late as possible, because the main reason why these faders exist is purely for balancing. And it's just making your life a bit easier when it comes to mixing down, to make sure that you don't touch these faders so that they are available for use to you. I've seen a lot of people make this mistake, especially a mistake that they end up making is that they automate these faders. And then when it comes to the mix down, they don't have access to those faders anymore because they're locked by the automation. So don't do that. Always do automations at the source, volume automations. or using a utility, or use a compressor, or use the volume knob inside your instrument. Avoid using this till much later in your process. Yeah. Yes, even with the bass, I'm pretty happy. I don't feel like, doing much. So maybe I'll just use a standard EQ8, and I'll just roll off the highs a little bit. Because again, we don't want the bass line to interfere with our mid frequencies, because that also can create problems. Because again, this bass line is kind of rhythmic. It's got that pitch variation happening, and it's got a bit of harmonics in it. So we want to address that issue right here. Yeah, this is better. Yeah, see, the kick and bass already sounding much cleaner. The bass has stopped interfering with your mids, and the mids feel like they're breathing a bit more, which I'm happy about. Now what you can do is, after doing processing like this, now we can actually do some group processing. Stuff like compression and, taming the low end a little bit if you want, and adjusting the dynamics of the group. And we'll also do that with the other groups. So what I'll do also is I will just check if I can maybe improve the low end a bit. So there is a device in Ableton called Corpus, and it has a preset called Kick Tight. So what I do is I just turn down the driver. It's basically Corpus, and it's a membrane setup, and it's got a slightly higher decay and everything. The whole reason being, you can use this to make your kick a bit tighter and add that body to the low end. And this, you might feel after doing a whole bunch of processing, you might feel that, okay, I've lost a bit of that body in the low end. This can help you add it back, but I would suggest be very subtle with it. I'll start adding it in. Yeah. So you see what happens if you're not subtle with it. I've gone up to 80%, and it's like, yeah. Now, obviously, this can also work. If you feel like your low end is really lacking in body, then this is something that can really work. But I'll maybe keep it to about 40%. 35. Yeah, this is good. And as you also notice, it added back a lot of the volume. So we'll adjust that. We'll fix that. What we'll do for that actually is we'll go to our, we'll use a compressor. Now I have a whole bunch of compressors and limiters over here. But for this one, we can maybe use the C2 from FabFilter, which is again, very transparent compressor. So for this kind of group processing, I generally stick to either punchy or transparent compressors. I'll switch over to the sponge preset inside the Pro C2, and we'll adjust the compressor. Now I can see that the gain reduction is at going to -12, which is quite a bit of gain reduction. We don't need to compress it so hard. And I'll give it a slightly harder knee also, that can compensate for, the less threshold. And yes, again, the ratio, I don't want to go too hard, as I said, so I'll keep it at 4:1 is fine. I'll mainly mess with the attack and release, and yes, main thing, I will turn off auto gain. I don't want auto gain. I want to adjust the gain myself. So I'll open up the attack a bit. I'll increase the attack time so that way the transients of the kick pop out a bit more, and I'll reduce the release time a bit. So what I'm trying to do basically here is with the attack and release. I think you may have already noticed, like whenever the kick and bass are playing together, and the kick seems fine because it's consistent. It's just one sound, just repeating constantly like a pulse. But one of the things that has that pitch variation is the bass. And because of that pitch variation, it creates a slight inconsistency in the volume. If you really pay attention, you'll hear it. Is when, especially when it goes to that slightly higher note, that boom boom, it increases the volume a little bit. So what I'm trying to do here with the attack and release is, of course, yes, trying to let the transient of the kick breathe, but at the same time using the release knob to tame the body of the low end as a whole, so that volume jumps don't happen, and basically making the kick and bass stick together, glue together, and make them sound more consistent in volume at the same time. So when I do compression, I also like to look at the meters because it really helps me gauge. Yeah, and I'll just reduce the output level again because it's too loud. Because of our processing, the volume has increased, but not a problem. Just reduce the output a bit, maybe give it a bit more threshold. And we'll also use the sidechain section. Now I'm not sidechaining it to anything external. We are going to use the internal sidechain of the compressor, and we will focus our efforts on the low end. So I think it's fine because anyway it's pretty consistent. Another thing you can do, very frequency specific ducking, which I had again covered in a previous video, which we'll do now, is where you can just go to the EQ and as if I remember correctly, it was around 50 hertz. Yeah, it's A, and it's at about 54.2 hertz. So what I'll do is I'll just make a dip at that on the bass. I'll just go to the bass, use a bell curve again. Let me turn off this low end over here, make it 50 hertz. This actually is not that necessary because what mastering engineers do is they generally cut off the low end of your kick as well. So what I could do is probably just keep it to like 20 hertz, or actually you can turn it off for now. Well, we don't want to mess with this right now. So what we'll do is I'll use the bell curve. We'll keep it to 54.2. That's where the kick is located, and I'm sure you can see where I'm going with this. What we're doing is basically creating a pocket inside the bass where the kick will sit, because as we know, the main peak of the kick, the mountain top of the kick, is at about 54.2 hertz. So this gives a little bit more breathing room between the kick and bass, and make sure that even if the frequencies between them were kind of overlapping or clashing and masking, this will help you to curtail that issue. Yeah, so now we have a much cleaner, much more rounded off, and much more sort of defined low end. You can obviously tweak this further. I mean, you can keep doing all kinds of things to it. You can compress it in different ways. You can saturate it. You can clip it. You can, tame the transients. If you feel that the kick's transients are a bit much, you can use something like a transient shaper. So this is a free one I can show you. Yes, there we go. From Kilohertz, you might have seen this transient shaper. So you can, I put it on the kick. Yeah, a little bit of, adjusting the transient. Yes, we have a question in the chat. I'll just address that in a second. Yeah, but that's a bit much. And let me adjust the attack with the mix. Yeah, much better. Now I feel we have a much more clean, much more glued, more cohesive low end. So yeah, I'm happy with that. We can move on. Right, we have a question. The question is, would we need to EQ this pocket if we are already doing sidechaining? That's a great question. It depends on the kind of sidechaining you're doing. So let's say if you're doing traditional sidechaining with a compressor, like we do with the Ableton's compressor, right? Like you add a compressor, Oops, sorry. We don't need this. We add a compressor. We use the external button. We take the source from the kick. This is the traditional technique. Or even if you're using like a kickstart, like how I'm using, then yes, you do need to create the pocket, because what you're doing right now is not very frequency specific. It's mostly based on volume, because what you're adjusting over here and creating a sort of like mini automation is on the volume of the sound. But there will be, of course, a small amount, relatively small amount of overlap here in this region where the kick and bass kind of are overlapping. So yes, I would suggest, even if you're doing traditional compression or if you're doing volume shaping style of sidechaining, I would highly recommend that you do a pocket like this. Where you don't need to do a pocket is if, let's say, you are using something like a spectral EQ or spectral sidechaining or frequency specific sidechaining, like a track spacer, which looks like this. In this case, it's basically a two-in-one, because it's doing the sidechaining for you as well. It's giving that ducking effect, and at the same time, it's targeting those specific frequencies where you need to do the ducking. So I have covered this in a different video. You can check it out. It's the previous sidechaining video that we did. I'll leave a link to this in the chat later on. But yeah, it's there on our channel. You can check it out. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Let me know if that's clear. Right, so moving on, we have our kick and bass, which for now, at least, I am happy with. It's in place. Again, we will come back to this again once we start treating the other sounds, because there's a lot of other sort of elements in this mix that need work and have their own low end, and they're interacting a bit with the kick and bass as well. So we will have to readdress the kick and bass at some point. So but yeah, and for now I think it's okay. Let's move on. So now we have our Hat and Tom and the rest of the drum group, which I will also quickly group. And on this you can, yeah, now I have done some processing on some of these. There's a basic EQ and stuff like that. I haven't gone too deep. So what I'll do to save time is I'll do a whole bunch of group processing on this. And also, if you would have noticed, I also have a few return channels over here, which are doing some things here. There are 3 reverbs. There's a drive, which is basically the Ableton pedal. And I have a parallel compression, which is our Ableton glue compressor. So I'll talk about this right after I finish all the other channels up here, right? But yeah, as you can see, there's like pretty much a lot of the channels are being fed to these channels here, right? Either to a reverb or something or the other. So what we'll do is actually, let's have a look, because I want pretty much all these sort of high elements to have at least a little bit of reverb. So let me just play it. This has reverb. This does not have reverb, so we'll give it a little bit of reverb. Yeah, a little bit. Right, this is like a sort of an effect kind of situation. Yeah, it has a reverb, that's okay. This is like a percussive loop. This is a hat loop. Another hat loop. I use a lot of loops and I layer them. Helps to make drums more exciting. And yeah, I was feeling a bit lazy, maybe that's all. Yeah, another hat loop. So yeah, I think they sound fine. They don't really have a lot of low end information that's clashing with my low end. But what I will, of course, do 100% is I will put my FabFilter Pro Q4, my favorite EQ, and I will EQ the low end. And I'm putting this directly on the group so that it's just to save time. Because as I said, I want to keep this Mixdown session not too deep and quick. So yeah, anyway, we don't really have a lot of information as I could anyway sense. So We also have a ride and clap. So what I'll do is actually I'll let me include the ride and clap as well inside this group because I'm pretty sure they will have some low end information. So I'm just going to, yeah, another quick tip and important note. Actually, I have already done this for most of the hats and high end sounds, but make sure you tune them. I'm in the scale of B minor. So just to make life easy for yourself, tune it while you're composing itself so that they sound cohesive, they sound in key, and it's the secret to making your track sound glued together, right? Yeah, so I am pretty happy with the, yeah, as you can see, that some of the toms, claps, and the rides are having a little bit of that low mid kind of frequencies, which I don't want. They are nothing but mud. Yeah, this much is okay. Right. So now I think it sounds fine. The EQ is okay. I don't really want to mess with the EQ much more. I might just do a small dip over here. But yeah, actually, I'll do this separately because I want to show you guys another technique later on when we're mixing our mids maybe. Okay, we have another question from Gmo XOXO. Should the kick be tuned as well? 100% yes. We actually did this. I think you may have missed it. We did this earlier on the stream. Everything, tune everything to be on the safe side. It's not, again, it's not a compulsory thing, and it's not, I would say it's more of a guide than a rule of thumb, because sometimes these elements are so atonal that it doesn't matter. But I would say to be on the safe side, and especially if you're making a track which has harmonic elements, which has a lot of tonality in it, then tune everything. And obviously the short sounds, the super fast transients will not be picked up by Ableton's tuner. So what you will have to do is like what we did earlier. You go to your kick, you have put a spectrum on it, and then you see where the kick is playing. So when you put your mouse at the peak of the kick, which is the peak of the kick is where the root note of the kick is. And you can see on the bottom left of the EQ window, we have this box, which basically tells you what hertz, what frequency that particular portion, wherever your cursor is, that what the frequency is. And of course, it tells you the key. So this is the best way to tune fast sounds with fast attacks and fast transients, which don't get picked up by the Ableton's tuner. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Yeah, so on this, of course, we will do more processing because there is also a lot of side information, the stereo information that we have inside this track. And I want to process that also separately. So I'll talk a bit about mid-side processing also. So what I'll do actually now, I think will be a good time, because we've been hearing the track a bit. Yeah, so we've been hearing the track, and I know that, there's a bunch of stereo information in the rest of the sounds. So what I'll do is I'll put a utility on our kick bass and I'll make it mono to be on the safe side. And what I'll do is I'll go to our main channel now, the master track, and we had this utility with the mono. I'm going to take this off now, because now I want to hear the track in the stereo, because we've heard the track a few times in mono and it seems fine. I'm not hearing any dropouts or volume inconsistencies in the mono while we were in mono. So I know that this track will sound decent in a mono system also. But yeah, we will have to deal with a lot of stereo information and stereo issues that we'll talk about, right? Yeah, so the group of the drums has some stereo information. Let's check. Yeah, there's some panning going on, some delays, stuff like that. So a great way to check stereo issues is to check something called phase correlation of this particular group. So what I'll do is I'll take the Ozone Imager. If you guys have used this plugin before, it's kind of a mastering plugin, but it's useful to either use this, bands to make your sound stereo more wider and more stereo. Mastering engineers do that, but I will not. I am not doing that right now. My only purpose of having this Ozone Imager on my drum group right now is I want to check if how wide the stereo signal is, and if there are any issues with the stereo signal, which will be visible here also. This is basically you see this +1, 0 and -1. There's something called phase correlation, which basically shows the correlation of phase between in this case, in this group. So if it's going into minus anywhere below 0, basically, then we have an issue. That means that there's some stereo information that's causing issues. So what we'll do is I'll hit play. Let's see if we have any issues. Amazing, we don't have any issues. Let's check the imager also. Yeah, so we do have some things which are like super wide, but it's okay. It's not really causing any phase issues, but we will have to EQ them, definitely. And I'll show you how. Yeah. So one thing I noticed is, and one thing that naturally happens is that because things get panned and delayed because of the composition process that you do when you're producing music. A lot of the mid-range, not mid-range, the mono sort of information from sounds like this goes away and it gets sort of sucked into the side. So what you can do is stuff like you can use mid-side saturation. So for example, you can use the HG2MS, which is a mid-side tube saturator by Plugin Alliance, very popular one. I've spoken about this before. So this is a great tool to sort of bring out that definition in the center and keep the sides not as relatively loud and saturated, even though you could do that even if you wanted. So right now it's in left and right mode. What I'll do is I will switch it to mid-side mode, which you do down here, where you turn on this, and now it's a mid and side processor, and it's a saturator basically. So I will do very subtle saturation in the middle. I'll just increase the pentode, which is basically adding harmonics, guys. These knobs, pentode and triad, they're the main knobs of the saturator. It's adding a bit of harmonics. So let's actually play it in the mix. You'll be able to hear the... Yeah, so as you can see, it's adding saturation to mid and sides together because I forgot to turn off parameter link. So hope you guys don't forget that. Turn off parameter link. So now you can treat both the mids and sides separately. So right now for the sides, I don't really want saturation. So I will keep the saturation concentrated to the center because that's where I feel the energy in the highs is lacking a bit. Yeah, you see the difference, how it's made the high frequencies and like the drums basically they feel more alive, they feel more in front, and they feel more energizing than they did before. They sounded very dull. Now the other ways to help you out in this case, you can take the same Ozone Imager, and as I said, if you feel like okay, there's a bit of sort of deadness in the center, it sounds hollow, then you can use just this first slider, which is applied to the whole frequency spectrum here. And this is basically it's a tool to make the sound more stereo or less stereo. That's all. It's like a width fader. So if I go up, that means it's going to increase the stereo width. like this. Let me, yeah, so you can see and you can hear it also, it's increasing the stereo width, but what I'll do is I'll just reduce it a bit because I don't want it to, I'll go actually in the negative, and I don't want to go too hard also. Yeah, that should be good enough. Just a little bit is good enough. Now, the drums feel more alive. Yeah, so that's a quick tip to make your drum sound more centered, more cohesive with your kick and bass as well, because those are the two main sort of the energizers, the groove drivers of tracks like this and in house, techno, drum and bass. So another thing we need to do is we need to do mid-side processing, as like how we did the similar philosophy here, where you separate the mid information and the side information into two separate sort of categories of their own and process them separately. We can do that even with EQs. In fact, it's a very essential thing. So what I'll do is we have this low cut here, which is at about 600 hertz. I'll just take this, I'll right click on this, and I'll do stereo placement. Now you can place it on the left to the right, you can place it to the mid side and sides. So by default it's in stereo. That means it's processing the whole signal left and right together. It's summed up and it's cutting off the low end for both together. But let's say I feel like, okay, the sides actually have a little bit of low end information that I don't want. So what I'll do is I'll turn this into side mode. And I will also make another low cut EQ over here around the same place, and I'll make it stereo placement to mids. So what I'll do is I'll keep the mid sort of EQ, the center EQ, the center information. I will keep that opened up maybe a little bit. And then the stereo information I'll cut off a bit more. So that way I don't want all those unnecessary lows and the mid frequency information in my mid range and low mids, because that'll again cause problem with my mids and my melodies and chords and pads and all that kind of stuff. So yeah. So let me do a quick A and B so you guys can hear the difference between the three things we've done so far. We are going to maybe add one or two more things, but for now I'll just group it so you can hear it. This is without the processing. This is what it sounds like. Now what I'll do is I'll just turn on this processing. Let's see how it sounds. You'll also notice, aside from sounding more clear and the high sounding more defined, one of the reasons for that actually is kind of a volume increase that's happening here, and that's because of the saturation and stuff we've done, but we'll deal with that. So let me just play it again. Yeah, so you can see without the processing, the the volume was quite low, but as soon as I play the so there's easily a 3 to 5 dB boost happening in the volume, which is good actually, which is what we need. We can obviously control the dynamics of things because there's a lot of different sounds in this group and there's a lot of things. So we're going to use some tools to control those dynamics. We'll do some compression. Let's see which compressor can I use for this. Maybe I can, again, I don't want to do any super aggressive kind of compression. I wanted to keep the compression subtle. So yeah, we'll just stick to our C2. As you can see, I have a whole bunch of different compressors and limiters over here. But I don't want to, as I said, overload you guys with just a list of plugins. So we'll keep the style to clean. We'll keep the threshold. Let's see how it sounds. Now there might be, I think, some sounds which have like a slightly longer tail. I just noticed, like for example, this ride here. Now the problem is it's already bounced, and yeah, it's already in audio, right? The ride. Yeah. So what I'll do is I will tame the transient. I don't want it to have such a long sustain. Now this is something you could have addressed before, but it's okay. We'll just use a transient shaper. And what I'll do is I will just use the sustain knob to bring it down a little bit. Give it a bit of attack. Yeah, see, much cleaner. Now that ride is not, the sustain sometimes kind of eats up the rest of the highs, if you, in case you notice. So let me just turn it on and off again so you guys can hear it. So without the transient shaper, it sounds like this, the rides. With the transient shaper, you see how it fits suddenly, like so much better into the group of your drums as a whole, and the sustain is not as long, and it's not eating away the rest of the highs, right? So yeah, very important to notice this kind of, you know, small things that can things. Okay, let me address a couple of questions. You asked about the kick tuning. Yes, that's a yes. Is there an Ableton stock plugin to do mid-side saturation? That's a good question. As far as I know, not really. I mean, there is a trick where you kind of make a chain and you use an EQ to separate the mids and the sides, and then you process them separately, and there's workarounds for it. You obviously have a mid-side mode in the EQ. Where you can, you know, use the stereo this thing and change it to mid-side mode. Now you have you know, you can assign it. You can either change it to mids or sides. You can go between the two pages basically. But for mid-side saturation, that's a great question actually. Let me look into this. I don't think there is mid-side saturation because all the audio effects are just straightforward stereo. Yeah, I'll look into this, but I don't think there is. I don't think there is. Yeah, there is another question. To measure stereo signals, like, do you use Oz? Yes, I do use Ozone Imager simply because it's a standard. It works well. I think it's free as well. Just check online. Check on the. I see. I have the whole bundle of Ozone, so I get the Imager by default anyway. But I think it's free. You can get the standard version of the Imager for free. You can check on the Isotope website. So yeah, it's just nice. It's accurate. There are obviously other stereo information analyzers out there, but this does the job well, and it's a very reliable one. Something I've been using for a while as well, so I'm used to using it. So yeah, yes. To answer your question, yes, this is something I use quite often. Yeah, coming back to the mix. Yeah, so what I'm going to do now is I've just opened up the compressor again because I again want to tame the transients because those high transients can pop out like a bit much. So if you keep the attack opened up, they pop out more, as you may have observed. But what I'll do is I generally just open up the attack fully, keep the release quite low, and keep the threshold at a relatively super low level so that it's you know, collapsing the threshold quite hard, and I'm able to hear the compression. And then obviously I adjust it. If I feel it's too drastic, I back off on it, you know. So yes, transient have to be tamed. So I don't want to squash the transients too much. So maybe this much. Yeah, I think this sounds good for now. Obviously, we can revisit this in a second after we finish the rest of the elements. So yeah, let's move on. Let's move on to actually one of the main parts of our Mixdown session is the pad and our leads, our chords and stuff, because these chords are basically our leads. So even on this, these two are effects. So what I'll do is let's address this section here. So I'll group it so that we know what we're working with. So this is your harmonies melody section. This is what it sounds like. Now what I'll do is I'll just quickly high pass all three separately, and then we'll look into mid-side EQing and stuff like that. So this is a singular sound, so maybe like about this much. Yeah. So I've removed it till about 300-400 hertz, something like that, because if I remove too much, it'll just become invisible. So I'll keep it at about maybe 350 hertz. I'll give a slight dip, which is fine for now. Another thing you will notice is that whenever you do low cuts like this and you high pass things, you lose out a lot of the volume of that sound. I mean, obviously, right, because you are carving out a lot of frequency information from that sound. So I generally do this, like if I feel, okay, I've removed quite a bit of information from a certain sound and it's lost volume. So like here, for instance, yeah, it's lost a bit of volume. So I'll give a bit of compensation here in the EQ's gain. I'll bring it back again by 2-3 dB. So I don't lose that sound fully. Yeah, this definitely needs high pass because there's a bit of low end information there. Yeah, you see this low end information here. We don't want that at all. So I'll go till about 600 for this, and again I'll crank it up by about 5 dB. And of course our pad. We'll go this about 500 hertz. Now, obviously, even this, because of our processing and EQing, it's lost a bit of information. So yeah, same technique as before. We'll actually do the similar kind of trick we did earlier, where we had used the black box mid-side processing, the MS. 1 second. Yeah, so now we have mid-side turn off parameter link. Now we have the same thing again on our mids group. Now on this, I'm going to process it a bit differently because for this, I don't want too much information in the center, but I do want the sides and the stereo information to shine because it gives that feeling of width. So what I'll do is I will increase the pentode and triode knobs so that it adds that little bit of harmonics in the sides. Yeah, make sure you turn off parameter lock. Parameter link, sorry, and then give it a bit of air, maybe a bit in the center. Now on this, obviously, I would like to do compression because there's a lot of dynamics. There's a lot of frequencies also kind of clashing, not clashing, but overlapping, you can say. They won't really clash. They're sounding fine together also because they're written in the same key. So that issue is not there, but sometimes frequency masking can still happen. So what you can do is here in this case, you can actually use some spectral sidechaining, which again, I have addressed in an earlier video. But I'll just show that same technique again. And for this, yes, I will go back to my FabFilter Pro Q4. And I will put it on the group this time, the whole group. And after this, not on the group, sorry. I'll put it on this because this is one of our main leads. So let me just rename this. So this is one of our main leads. So what I'll do is I'll put the Pro Q4, I'll leave it here actually. I'll use the same Pro Q4 on the lead as well. And if you remember the sidechain previous video, I spoke about spectral processing, where you take sidechain information from another source, put it into an EQ, and you let the Pro Q4 do its spectral processing stuff. So I'll just do a quick high pass filter here. And what I'll do is I will actually put this on the pad because I want the lead to shine more. So now we have a simple high pass on the pad. Now what I'll do is I will take this mid range over here and I will make it spectral, and I will take sidechain input into my Pro Q4 from my lead, which is this one. And I make it, yeah, the spectral mode is on. And now you can open the spectral section using this arrow, and I turn on the external sidechain button. This is very important, otherwise it will not receive the input signal. And then you can adjust the density of the bands. I don't recommend keeping it all the way up. You can keep it to maybe about here, because then too many dense frequency resonance suppression too much of it can actually start creating some phasing issues and make your sound very artificial and plastic in a way, which we don't want. We wanted to sound smooth and natural. That's the whole point actually. We're trying to make the mid sound more silkier. Yeah, so you can see. Yeah, so you can see when this lead plays, it doesn't overlap with the. Yeah, so it's just an example of making those elements interact better with each other. So volume can come up a bit. Right, so now we have our Pro Q4 on the group. Again, we can just do it precautionary high pass as we normally do. Now, obviously, this again has lost a bit of volume because of that. So what we can do to make the mids harmonics more consistent is do some compression again. So for this channel, actually, I'll use the LA2A. If you use the LA2A compressor before, either from Waves or UAD, I have the UAD one, which is very nice, which is again based on a very famous tube compressor. I think it's from the 70s or 80s. I can't remember, but yes, it was a very super popular one. You can look into the history of this thing. And as you can see, it doesn't have an attack release. It doesn't really have a threshold. It doesn't have a knee. It doesn't have a hold. It doesn't have sidechain. It mainly just is a simple compressor that takes in signal, does its compression, and spews it out. It has its own natural attack and release that you can't adjust, but it's kind of baked into the machine. All you really can do is do peak reduction, which is you're reducing your threshold, and adjust, compensate your gain after that. So what I'll do is I'll just give a bit more peak reduction. So we have. Yeah, so right now you can see that the needle is not jumping. That's because the compressor is not, the signal is not hot enough for the compressor to be able to hear it. So what I'll do is I'll crank it up. Let me just reduce the gain a bit. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, we don't. I'm gonna just make this a bit, because that sort of bubbly kind of sound coming in this is bothering me a bit. So I'm gonna remove that. I'm gonna make the cut a bit harsher. Feel free to use a different EQ, by the way. We'll actually make this breathe a bit. Yeah, also I will make this a bit more Yeah. Right, so now we have done a bit of processing and we're pretty much done. These last two channels don't really need too much. I'll group them. They're basically our effects, like there's a reverse crash and just like these splashes. So again, we don't want to complicate things with them. So what I'll do is I'll group them and we'll just EQ it and compress it a bit. Yeah, I don't want any of this, and we'll use a standard Ableton compressor. I don't want to get too fancy with this. Yeah, I think the volume is also fine. Right, so now what we'll do is, as you can see, because the track progresses in a certain way, elements keep going in, coming out, all that kind of stuff. What we can do is I can use something called clipping to make the volumes of each of the groups more consistent. So let me actually show you how you can make your own clipper sort of in Ableton, where you take the saturator. You can obviously use free clippers like K-Clip and all that. There's so many free clipping devices. In case you don't know what a clipper is, basically it's like a compressor and a limiter. As you know, compressors and limiters have a threshold, and whenever volume and amplitude crosses that threshold, it does something. Like in a compressor, it ducks it down, presses the volume down. In a limiter, it's more of a brick wall. It doesn't even allow the volume to cross the threshold, so it's like hitting a wall. In a clipper, it's similar, but not exactly, because it does allow some amplitude to cross the threshold. But as soon as it does, it decapitates the sound. It totally chops off the signal. I can show you visually as well, but yeah, let's just do some clipping. So to do clipping, there's multiple ways. As I said, there's dedicated clip devices you can use for clipping if you want. So what you can do, for example, in this case is use the saturator, and you just turn off something called soft clip. You just click on this drop down, turn on soft clip, and make sure it's switched to digital clip, because this is the cleanest form of clipping. Because when you do analog clip or literally any other algorithm inside the saturator, it always adds unnecessary harmonics and everything. The most transparent form of clipping, the clean clipping that we want, is the digital clip. So we'll keep it to digital clip. And then I will increase the drive and reduce the output simultaneously. Yeah, so I'm going to increase the drive till I see this. There's a small indicator here. You'll see it flashing. Yeah. So that means I'm clipping it. Now I don't want to clip it too hard. I'm going to be very subtle with the clipping. Yeah, so we can do the same thing now. I can just duplicate this and put it on the other group. That's our drums group. So as you can see here, it's made the volumes of the group and the sounds as a whole much more consistent, and it's taking care of all the peaks, because as I said, as soon as something crosses that threshold, it chops off the sound. Now you have to be very careful. As I said, you can't do this too hard, because you will start creating distortion in your sound. So be careful with that. Another thing I would prefer to do here actually with the drums is I would like to sidechain this a bit, like give it that volume shaping actually. And yeah, just a little bit, not too much. And do the same with this channel as well, where I do a bit of ducking. Again, we don't want the ducking to be too intense. Yeah, Yeah, this group is quite loud again. So what I'll do is I'll use the same clipper that we made and duplicate and onto the group here again. Yeah, this now we can start to adjust the group's volumes as well. I don't want the drum group to be too loud because it's this phenomenon called perceived loudness, where basically a lot of these slightly high frequencies are very audible to human ears because of evolution, and our ears are actually designed in a way where it prioritizes human voice, and most human voice is between that range. So hence our ears have evolved that way, and that's why our ears are sensitive to those frequencies. That's why you don't need to give it too much volume. So yeah, this is something to keep in mind. Yeah, so now we're in the sort of volume balancing stage of our mix. Yeah, so I think now actually is a good time to address my return channel. So as I was telling you guys earlier, I have 3 reverbs. There's a long, medium, and short reverb, and for all 3 of them, for this project, I'm just using the same reverb. It's this FabFilter Pro R2. One of the reasons why is I like how easy it is to use, and it's got this inbuilt equalizer and diffusion sort of shaper that I can use to tailor each of my reverb separately. And again, yeah, you can actually tweak your reverb in certain ways where it sounds good. Yeah, this is a bit loud maybe, and I can hear that distortion happening. Yeah, so what we can do is we can just tame the volume of this a bit, and even this, and even this, so that the clipper is not hitting too hard. Because if the volume at the source is quite high, then it feeds into the clipper very hard, and thus the clipper becomes very sensitive and starts to distort a bit, which I don't want. I want it clean. Yeah, back off on the clipper as well. Yeah, always you can come back and increase the volume. Yeah, a little bit. Much better. Yeah, so we're pretty much done. I'm just going through last few things, and then we'll do the last bit of volume balancing, and we'll take a break for today's session because we've already been mixing for about 90 minutes. So yes, breaks are important, and I will obviously come back at a later time, maybe later tonight or even tomorrow, with fresh ears, tweak the mix. There might have been some things which I missed, some things which require tweaking, some things which were maybe unnecessary also, remove them. So good to take breaks, very important. This was, again, I would say a kind of a simplified version, because as I said, when I do mixdowns, it happens over the course of a few hours where I mix for a bit, take a break, come back. So yeah. But so far, as what I can tell right now, I think it sounds fine. Let me wrap up actually by speaking about my return tracks. Now I'm going to do a dedicated video about return tracks later on, but for now all you need to do is you need to know is what's on there. So let me actually answer your questions, guys. Hold on. So there is a question: if Clipper chops off the sound, isn't the same as a limiter, then in some sense, what is the benefit of using Clipper versus limiter? Why are you trying to achieve? So essentially, at the end, what I'm trying to achieve is consistency in volume, and I don't obviously want the volume to exceed a certain threshold in certain things, because as you saw, a lot of the channels have different elements and they have different volumes, and because of that it gives a lot of movement and fluctuation. And you saw it in the meter also. The as sounds went in and came out, the meter kept jumping up and down. So I don't want that too much, because that one eats away a lot of the headroom. Second, it makes your mix sound very inconsistent, and the end result is when it does get mastered, which it will, it loses a lot of its volume potential, so it doesn't sound as loud, powerful, and energizing as you would want it to. So controlling dynamics in dance music especially is very important to get loud mixes and make sure that your music is at least somewhat competitive with the rest of the music around the world. So you can use a limiter, yes, but the thing is, with limiters it can get very harsh, and limiters are also very sensitive. You start feeding information into it, and what happens is the loudness kind of gets clogged up near the top, and because of that it's very easy to start getting distortion and start getting even muddiness, because all your volume, your loudness, everything is hitting that ceiling so hard. But with the Clipper, there's nothing holding the signal down. It's just that as soon as the signal crosses the threshold, it gets chopped off. And we heard an example of that with one of the lead sounds, where it was hitting the Clipper so hard that we could hear that slight crackling distortion kind of sound, which I didn't want. Now that might be desirable in some cases, you might want it, but in this case we wanted to keep it clean. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I again don't want to dive too deep into compression, limiting, and Clipper right now, because we are short on time, and those are kind of extensive rabbit holes and topics within themselves. So we'll do another video on that, if don't worry. Yes, I will visit this project again, and I'm going to save it, because I'm actually planning to do a video on mastering as well, like quick mastering, like a homemade mastering chain and stuff like that. That probably should be later in the week, which I'll announce maybe tomorrow or something. That'll happen later in the week. Yeah, so that we will come back to the same track. Actually, I will master the same track for sure for you guys, and then we'll see what to do from there. If you have any other questions, please drop them in the chat, guys. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. Yeah, let me actually cover quickly how to bounce your track as well. So yeah, as I was saying, on my drive channel, which is the D, it's just a pedal, and the drive it is at 100%. I've turned on the sub. Now you can turn on and off the sub depending on whether you want that, because sub is nothing but just enhancing the low end more. So if you don't want that, yeah, actually I feel without the sub it's much cleaner, so we will leave it there. Or you can turn it on. Yeah, the sub is adding good body also, so we'll leave the sub where it is. You can enhance the mids and the treble also. You can, instead of doing overdrive, you can do distort and fuzz, but for now I just wanted drive. I don't want any distortion and fuzz. So that's on my return channel, and I've sent it to quite a few elements. Pretty much all elements have a little bit of drive on them. And finally, this is the important one also. It's a parallel compression. So this also you can, fine tune after you finished your mix down, because this, again, like this, literally every single channel in my whole mix is going to the parallel compressor in full. So because I want a full duplicate of my track on this return channel, because this signal here will be fully compressed. It'll be very, very hard compressed. So that way I can mix between the compressed signal and the uncompressed signal simply by using this one fader over here on the parallel compression channel, right? So let's see how it is actually. So let me solo this. So you guys can see the very hard compression happening. The attack and release are relatively opened up. Threshold is all the way down. There's barely any makeup happening. Drive it is at 100%. Ratio is not that high, but I can increase that. Yeah. Now, if you feel that, okay, this overdriven signal is also a bit much, you can back off on this. So I'll just do like a minus 6 dB reduction on the drive. And on the parallel compression, maybe I can give that compensation. So I'll go -10 actually, because I don't want the overdriven signal to be so loud. But I do want the compressed signal to be more loud, because that actually makes the mix more uniform. That's one of the benefits actually of doing parallel compression like this, which again, if you want, I'll dive more deep into in a different episode. Yeah, we can maybe crank up the makeup gain. Again, very careful with your parallel compression, because if you overdo it with this, and if the parallelly compressed signal is too much of a big part of your whole mix, it's going to start creating these very weird pumping kind of effect, and your track will just sound over compressed, which you don't want. You want your track to be still breathing a bit. You don't want your dynamics fully killed off. That's not healthy. Yeah, so just maybe a little bit of your parallel compressed signal should be enough. Yeah, so that's it. I've saved it. Hope you guys enjoyed the first Mixdown stream. I'll be doing many more of these for sure as I finish more tracks, and we'll dive deeper into more topics, because Mixdowns are quite a broad topic, and there's a lot of technical stuff and non-technical stuff that we still need to look at actually. But we covered a lot of the basics, I would say, at least. So yeah, if you have any more questions, you can ask me. Otherwise, let's wrap up. All right. Seems like that's it, guys. Yeah, one quick thing I forgot to mention. Yeah, you just, once you're done mixing down, you select your whole track and you just press Command-Shift-R, you'll get this window. So yeah, these settings, again, you can just, leave most of it as default, or you can see my settings and leave them as they are and just export it. Make sure you export wave, because that's the best quality for your track. And yeah, export. And yeah, that's about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the stream, and thank you so much for joining in, and hope to see you guys in the next one. Peace.